Have you ever trusted your eyes and been completely wrong? It feels absurd to even ask, but the reality is that your brain doesn't show you the world as it truly is. Instead, it constructs a version of reality based on fragments of sensory information, past experiences, and countless assumptions. This means that what you believe to be objective, the colors you see, the objects you recognize, even the spatial layout around you, may be far from accurate. You feel confident, certain, and grounded in the environment, yet this perception is essentially a model, not the world itself. Think about walking into a room you've never visited before. Your brain instantly fills in gaps, predicts layouts, and even interprets ambiguous shapes to match what it expects. In many cases, you are blind to contradictions because your mind has already constructed a coherent narrative for the scene. This process happens so seamlessly that it feels intuitive, as though you are directly perceiving the truth. Contrast this with the underlying fact: your experience is filtered, edited, and sometimes rewritten entirely by neural processes that are largely invisible to you. The world you perceive is filtered through a system optimized for survival, not accuracy. Even simple objects are not always perceived accurately. Optical illusions demonstrate that your brain can confidently misinterpret size, color, and motion. A stick half submerged in water looks bent. Two lines of equal length appear different. Depending on the surrounding context, motion can be perceived where none exists. These are playful examples, yet they reveal a deeper truth. If basic sensory information can mislead, what does this imply about more complex, abstract judgments? How often does your brain fill in gaps in ways that subtly distort your understanding of reality without you ever noticing? Memory, too, is not a passive recording device. The moments you recall are reconstructed every time you think about them, influenced by your expectations, emotions, and even suggestions from others. You might remember a conversation, a classroom lesson, or a childhood event with absolute certainty, but the brain's reconstruction can introduce errors so small they feel natural. Contrast the confidence of your recollection with the fragility of its accuracy, and suddenly the line between reality and perception blurs. You are certain, yet certainty can be misleading. This gap between perception and reality has profound implications. Daily decisions, judgments about people, and even moral choices rely on a constructed sense of what is true. If your senses and memory can mislead so easily, it suggests that much of your experience is an interpretation shaped by evolutionary priorities, personal biases, and neural architecture, rather than direct observation. Awareness of this disconnect is the first step toward understanding how your mind works, because it reveals that reality is not simply out there, it is actively built by the brain. As we begin to unpack these ideas, it becomes clear that the question isn't just whether your brain can lie, but how it systematically does so, and why it evolved to operate in this way. By exploring the mechanisms behind perception, memory, and cognition, we start to see the hidden rules that shape the world you think you experience. Understanding this is not merely an intellectual exercise, it is a journey into the subtle ways your own mind interprets, edits, and occasionally deceives itself, preparing you for a deeper dive into the processes that shape your reality. Your brain doesn't passively record the world, it actively constructs it. Every sensation you experience, from the colors of a sunset to the sound of footsteps behind you, is filtered through layers of neural processing, expectation, and prior knowledge. What this means is that reality isn't simply delivered to your consciousness like a photograph. Instead, your brain is constantly making predictions about what should happen and then correcting itself based on sensory input. In essence, you are not seeing the world directly, you are seeing your brain's best guess of the world. Consider your visual system. Your eyes capture light, but the raw data is incomplete and ambiguous. The brain must fill in gaps using context, memory, and patterns it has learned over time. For example, when looking at a partially obscured object, your brain can complete the missing pieces, often without your awareness. This is incredibly efficient. It allows you to navigate complex environments quickly, but it also means that what you perceive may not match physical reality. Contrast this efficiency with potential error. Your brain prioritizes speed and survival over precise accuracy. And sometimes this trade-off leads you to misinterpret what is directly in front of you. The predictive nature of the brain extends far beyond vision. Auditory perception is similarly shaped by expectations and context. Ever misheard someone's words and only later realize your mistake? That's your brain filling in sounds to match its expectations. Even touch, taste, and smell operate under similar principles, combining raw sensory input with prior experience to create a coherent, but not necessarily objective experience of the world. The brain is a master of constructing plausible realities, And most of the time, you never notice the difference. Memory plays a complementary role in shaping your perception of reality. When you recall a past event, the brain reconstructs the memory rather than retrieving a perfect recording. Every recall is influenced by current knowledge, emotions, and context, subtly rewriting what actually happened. Over time, these reconstructions accumulate, creating a personal narrative that feels certain but is subject to distortion. Contrast this internal certainty with the potential for error, and you start to see the fragility of your grasp on reality. What you remember is often more a reflection of your brain's interpretive tendencies than an accurate account of events. Belief formation is another process deeply intertwined with perception. The brain seeks coherence and meaning, often prioritizing internal consistency over external truth. This leads to cognitive biases, where information that confirms your expectations is amplified, while contradictory evidence is downplayed. Confirmation bias, the tendency to see patterns where none exist, and the anchoring effect, where initial impressions skew subsequent judgments, all illustrate the brain's inclination to mold perception to fit a coherent narrative. Contrast the confident conviction of your beliefs with the possibility that they may be subtly distorted, and it becomes clear how easily your constructed reality can diverge from objective fact. These processes, while sometimes misleading, are also what make human cognition so powerful. Your brain can integrate vast amounts of incomplete information, predict outcomes, and respond adaptively in real time. The trade-off between speed, coherence, and accuracy has allowed humans to survive, thrive, and create sophisticated cultures and technologies. But the very mechanisms that make perception efficient also leave room for systematic error, revealing that the world as you experience it is not absolute. It is a continuous negotiation between external input and internal interpretation. As we move forward, the challenge is to understand where these interpretations can mislead and how cognitive quirks manifest in everyday life. By studying illusions, biases, and the quirks of attention, we uncover the subtle ways the brain alters reality, sometimes in ways that feel intuitive but are objectively inaccurate. This understanding sets the stage for the next section, where we will explore specific tricks and perceptual illusions that demonstrate the brain's extraordinary and occasionally deceptive power to shape the world you think you see. It's one thing to understand that your brain actively constructs reality, but it becomes startling when you see the ways it deliberately misleads you. Optical illusions, cognitive biases, and quirks of attention offer vivid demonstrations that what feels obvious is often profoundly misleading. The world you think you perceive is, in these moments, a careful fabrication designed by evolution to prioritize survival, speed, and pattern recognition over strict accuracy. Every illusion is a reminder that perception is a creative act, not a passive reflection of reality. Consider the famous Mueller-Lyer illusion. Two lines of equal length appear drastically different depending on the direction of arrowheads at their ends. Most people see one line as longer, yet if you measure them, they are identical. The brain interprets visual cues based on context and prior experience, automatically correcting or miscorrecting spatial information. Contrast what you feel with what is objectively true. Your perception screams one thing, but reality quietly contradicts it. The subtle power of this effect demonstrates that even fundamental geometric judgments are filtered through layers of expectation. Beyond visual trickery, attention itself can deceive. Psychologists have demonstrated phenomena like inattentional blindness, where observers fail to notice a gorilla walking across a scene when focused on a specific task. You may be confident that you see everything relevant, yet your brain has filtered out critical information entirely. Contrast the conviction of your focus with the reality of what your senses deliver, and you begin to appreciate the selective nature of perception. The mind is not a perfect recorder, it is an editor, emphasizing some data, suppressing others, and shaping the narrative to what seems most relevant or expected. Cognitive biases further illustrate how your brain distorts judgment. Confirmation bias leads you to notice information that confirms your pre-existing beliefs, ignoring contradictory evidence. Anchoring causes first impressions to heavily influence later judgments. Availability bias makes vivid or recent experiences disproportionately impactful. Each of these biases operates unconsciously, producing a sense of certainty that feels justified, even when it is systematically flawed. Contrast the confidence you feel with the hidden mental shortcuts that quietly manipulate your perception of truth, and you start to see the subtle deception at work. Memory, too, is not immune to tricks. The phenomenon of false memory shows how individuals can vividly recall events that never occurred, complete with detail and emotional resonance. This is not simply forgetfulness, it is active reconstruction, where gaps are filled with plausible, sometimes fabricated, information. Contrast the richness and emotional certainty of these recollections with their objective inaccuracy. And it becomes clear that even personal experience is a subjective narrative shaped by the brain's interpretive tendencies. Many perceptual illusions combine multiple mechanisms, producing experiences that are both compelling and confounding. Take the rubber hand illusion, where synchronous stroking of a visible rubber hand and a hidden real hand can convince the brain that the fake hand belongs to the body. This demonstrates how sensory integration and expectation can override direct physical reality, highlighting the brain's remarkable and occasionally deceptive capacity for constructing coherent experience from incomplete data. Contrast the certainty of ownership and sensation with the absurdity of the situation. The mind is both adaptive and vulnerable, capable of tricking itself with remarkable ease. These illusions and biases are not mere curiosities. They reveal fundamental principles of human cognition. Your brain is a predictive engine, constantly balancing speed, survival, and coherence against objective accuracy. The perceptual tricks you experience in these experiments reflect mechanisms that operate continuously in everyday life. From misjudging distances while driving, to overestimating risks, to interpreting social cues incorrectly, the mind's shortcuts shape decisions and beliefs at every moment. Contrast the simplicity of the objective world with the complex, filtered version your brain constructs, and you begin to understand the invisible scaffolding of cognition. Understanding these mechanisms is empowering. By recognizing the ways the brain distorts perception, you gain insight into your own judgments, decisions, and beliefs. Awareness of illusions and biases is the first step in learning to navigate reality more accurately. It sets the stage for the next section, where we will delve into the neuroscience behind these errors, revealing the biological and neural processes that create the elaborate, occasionally misleading world you think you experience. Beneath the surface of perception and memory lies a complex biological engine, a neural orchestra whose patterns create the reality you experience. The brain does not passively record, it actively interprets, predicts, and sometimes deceives. Neurons fire in intricate networks, weighing past experiences, sensory input, and expectations, producing a coherent but imperfect picture of the world. What you believe to be objective often reflects the brain's prioritization of survival and efficiency rather than truth. Consider how belief itself is encoded. Networks in the prefrontal cortex integrate evidence, evaluate options, and construct judgments. This system is remarkably efficient, producing confident conclusions with limited information. Contrast this efficiency with vulnerability. When data is ambiguous or incomplete, the brain fills in gaps using heuristics and biases. These mental shortcuts are adaptive. They help you navigate complex environments quickly, but they also create systematic errors, shaping judgments and perceptions in ways that feel natural yet can be misleading. Memory and error are tightly linked in this neural framework. Hippocampal circuits consolidate experiences, but every retrieval reconstructs rather than recalls. When you remember a conversation, your brain actively rebuilds it, influenced by your current state, knowledge, and even subtle suggestions. Contrast the vividness and confidence of these reconstructed memories with their objective fidelity, and it becomes clear that what you believe happened may differ significantly from what actually occurred. The brain prioritizes narrative coherence over factual precision, and this principle underlies many cognitive illusions. Even sensory processing is subject to neural interpretation. The visual cortex, auditory pathways, and multisensory integration centers constantly resolve conflicting signals, predicting outcomes to maintain a seamless experience. These predictions are filtered through top-down control, shaped by prior knowledge and expectations. Contrast the effortless appearance of perception with the hidden computations required, and it becomes evident that your experience is a synthesis of biology, expectation, and pattern recognition rather than a straightforward mirror of reality. Biases such as confirmation, anchoring, and availability emerge naturally from these neural mechanisms. The brain favors information that maintains coherence, often disregarding contradictory evidence. Dopaminergic circuits reinforce reward-driven learning, sometimes amplifying false associations. The result is a system that feels rational and reliable but can subtly distort reality. Contrast the certainty of your belief with the intricate, fallible machinery producing it, and you begin to understand why errors in judgment are not simply mistakes, they are byproducts of the brain's design. This biological perspective also clarifies why some illusions feel so compelling. The rubber hand illusion, misperceived motion, and attention-related blind spots all exploit predictable patterns of neural integration and expectation. Your sense of ownership, motion, and attention is constructed, not simply experienced. Contrast your intuitive confidence with the neural processes that underpin it, and you recognize the hidden scaffolding of cognition, an elegant, adaptive, yet occasionally fallible architecture shaping every moment of experience. Understanding the neuroscience behind these errors is not merely academic. It illuminates why humans hold strong beliefs despite contrary evidence, why memories can be unreliable, and why perception can be deceived in subtle, everyday ways. Awareness of these mechanisms allows you to question assumptions, anticipate cognitive biases, and engage with reality more thoughtfully. Contrast your intuitive experience with the underlying processes, and a pattern emerges. The brain is a master storyteller, weaving narratives from fragments of input, and the errors it produces are as informative as its successes. As we prepare to conclude, these insights pave the way to not only recognize the tricks of perception, but to actively refine them. By understanding how the brain constructs, distorts, and maintains belief, we gain the tools to approach the world more critically and consciously. In the next section, we will explore how this awareness can transform perception, empowering you to see the world with greater clarity and curiosity. If your brain has been subtly shaping, editing, and even deceiving your perception all along, the question becomes, how can you navigate reality more consciously? Understanding the mechanics behind perception and belief doesn't make illusions disappear, but it equips you with a mental lens sharper than intuition alone. By recognizing that what feels certain may be constructed, you begin to see opportunities to challenge assumptions, question immediate judgments, and appreciate the difference between sensation and truth. Awareness is the first tool. Simply knowing that your brain fills in gaps, reconstructs memory, and prioritizes coherence allows you to pause before fully trusting what you perceive. Contrast the automatic confidence you normally feel with the humility that arises from this understanding, and suddenly ordinary experiences take on a new dimension. A familiar room, a conversation, or a decision is no longer just as it seems. Critical thinking becomes the second instrument. By actively questioning patterns, considering alternative explanations, and evaluating evidence beyond immediate intuition, you can counteract some of the distortions inherent in perception. Contrast your habitual assumptions with this deliberate approach. Decisions that might once have been guided by bias can now be informed by awareness. This does not eliminate error entirely, it never could, but it allows for a more refined, conscious engagement with the world, empowering you to act with clarity rather than mere reaction. Observation itself transforms under this mindset. Optical illusions, social interactions, and even your own memory can be seen not just as curiosities, but as lessons in the brain's interpretive tendencies. Contrast the effortless certainty of naive perception with the insight of informed observation, and each experience becomes both a mirror of the external world and a window into your mind. You begin to appreciate the elegance of cognition, its efficiency, its creativity, and the occasional mistakes that illuminate its complexity. Finally, this awareness encourages intellectual humility. Recognizing that your brain is both brilliant and fallible fosters patience with yourself and others. It allows you to entertain multiple perspectives, to remain curious, and to accept that certainty is often provisional. Contrast the arrogance of assumed infallibility with the freedom that comes from understanding your cognitive limitations. Knowledge is not diminished by error, it is deepened by recognizing the hidden mechanics shaping your perception. In practical terms, seeing the world more clearly is not about achieving perfect accuracy, it's about cultivating a mindset attuned to the brain's tendencies. By combining awareness, critical thinking, observation, and humility, you can engage with reality more thoughtfully, question assumptions without anxiety, and embrace curiosity as a guiding principle. Contrast what the brain wants you to assume with the informed perspective you can achieve, and suddenly the world you experience feels richer, more intricate, and profoundly alive. In this way, understanding the brain's tricks becomes not a limitation, but a doorway to wonder, insight, and a deeper connection to the reality you inhabit.